Congressman Al Green has been in office for 20 years. You've been in office for, I don't know, 90 days. Why should people vote for you over Al Green?
What I'm hearing across communities is that people want a strategic fighter who's going to be in this for the long haul. The threats that we're up against right now in this country with President Trump and his Supreme Court allowing states to racially gerrymander across this country, with a president who has taken us into a mindless war, all while costs are rising and people don't have enough money to feed their family. They're looking for folks in Congress who are going to stand up and fight back.
You don't think Al Green will stand up and fight back?
Not effectively, no.
Because?
Because there's no evidence that he will, because he hasn't. If you look at what's going on in Congress right now, you have members who serve on the Judiciary Committee, on the Oversight Committee. These are the members who have cross-examined people like Pam Bondi, like Kristi Noem, and they've been able to get those folks fired by the Trump administration. You have members who have gotten substantial legislation passed to make people's lives better. And we simply have not seen that out of Congressman Green. He's been in Congress for 20 years. He's passed 4 bills, and 2 of those 4 bills were to rename post offices. What people are looking for right now is effective fighters who are going to go in with a new mindset to bring and produce real results. And that's what I did as county attorney. When I was county attorney, we took on some of the toughest fights against large corporations, against the Trump administration, to protect voting rights, to stop cigarette companies from selling vaping products to our kids, to make sure that every single person has clean air and clean water. We delivered results, and that's what I'm going to bring to Congress.
Al Green sits on committees. He has clout with the Congressional Black Caucus. He would say experience matters. You say? Experience
matters when it delivers. If you look at the late Congresswoman Sheila Jackson Lee, she delivered. She led the charge to reauthorize the Violence Against Women Act. If you look at the late Congressman Mickey Leland, he delivered and took on poverty across the world to make sure that we were getting more money funding into parts of Africa. Are you saying that Congressman Green has become complacent? I'm just arguing that there are results that can be shown directly as a result of the work of the late Congresswoman Sheila Jackson Lee or Mickey Leland. But also young people can effectuate results too. When the late Congresswoman Barbara Jordan helped get Richard Nixon out of office, she had been in Congress for 18 months. So I believe that seniority matters, but it matters when it delivers. Folks who have seniority in chair committees, folks who have seniority and pass numerous pieces of legislation. The congressman is not a chair of any committee. The congressman has passed 4 pieces of legislation in 20 years. There's a brother out of Colorado who's been in Congress for about 9 years. He's passed 33 pieces of legislation. We need to be sending folks to Congress who are going to work, who are going to do the job and produce results for the community.
If what you say is true about the congressman, what are you saying about his tenure?
I respect the congressman's service, and I'm grateful to him for serving in the United States House of Representatives. I think I would be a better representative for the people of the 18th Congressional District.
Is this a matter of old school versus new school?
Not at all.
Has Al Green been in Congress too long?
When I go across communities, what they say to me is they want mentorship, they want the torch to be passed, and it's not an age thing, it's an effectiveness thing. Look, when I served as Harris County Attorney, I transformed an office of 300 people and turned it into a fighting force for democratic values, for environmental justice, for voting rights across the entire state. We were an office that other offices throughout the state looked to get stuff done, because that is the brand that we built, and those were the results that we have. Your work product is not your resume, it is the list of results that you've done. And I'm proud of my record as county attorney. I've been in Congress for only 90 days, but I've already started introducing legislation. And once I hit 10 years in Congress, I will be able to point to you a list of bills that I've gotten passed, a list of committee chairships that I've had, because I will produce.
Is there anything that you respect about what Congressman Green has done in office?
Absolutely. Look, I have the utmost respect for Congressman Green.
But
I think he's shown protest is important. The congressman has never been afraid to stand up and protest in the important moments. But I think what we've learned from leaders throughout generations is that protest is important, but you also have to produce. For example, the late Dr. Martin Luther King marched on the Edmund Pettus Bridge, and that was incredibly important. But he also was standing behind President Johnson when he signed the Civil Rights Act of 1964. I think what folks in our community are looking for is effective production, getting stuff done to make the communities throughout the 18th look better. That's the type of work I did as county attorney, and that's what I'll be doing in Congress.
At a recent debate, Congressman Green claims you missed a vote in Congress because you were partying in Houston. Is that true?
No, it's not true at all.
Where did he get that from?
I think he's conflating a couple of things. When I first took over this office, we had a delay in our election for about a year. The 18th Congressional District went a year without congressional representation. So when I took over this office, there was no handoff binder, there was no resume bank, there was no office of employees waiting for me. And as I undertook the work to take on building up the office, I spent 3 days in Houston doing the work of the people, meeting with community members, building up the office, instead of taking a couple of votes in D.C. I missed a total of 3 days, that's 8 votes. And so the congressman has decided to attack me for this. But this same congressman, Congressman Green, has had Congresses, 2-year periods, where he missed more than 70 votes. He had another Congress where he missed 36 votes. But he's doing exactly what Greg Abbott and Republicans would want. He's trying to attack me because he's unable to run on his own record. I've been focused very heavily in this campaign on my record as Harris County Attorney, on the work that I will do to make life better for the people of the 18th Congressional District, and not trying to make dishonest attacks.
You're comparing Al Green to Greg Abbott?
No, not at all. I'm saying he's doing exactly what they wanted when they redrew these districts. Look, the point here was to combine the 18th and the 9th Congressional Districts to pit 2 black leaders against each other. And I stepped out from the beginning and talked about my vision for the 18th Congressional District and how I'm going to make people's lives better, to bring down costs, to address the rising costs of groceries, of gas, to try to put a stop to the endless wars that this president has undertaken us in. If you go look at our debate from this past Monday, my remarks were about how I'm going to make life better. The congressman's remarks were about me. And he's falling into the play that was set up by Greg Abbott when they drew 2 black leaders into the same race.
You told me before this interview that the attacks by Al Green is sort of a reference to something your father has said. And what has your dad said?
If they're trying to attack you, it's because you got the ball. Look, in what instance would you see 2 members of Congress showing up for a debate, ready to present their ideas when people are dealing with all these issues, and one member is talking to you about the future and how they're going to make life better for people, and the other one is using all of their speaking time to talk about 3 days worth of missed votes, when that same member had a Congress where he missed more than 70 votes. It's a dishonest attack, and it's unfortunate. My campaign is going to continue to be focused on what we're going to do to make life better for people. That means standing up to get a Voting Rights Act that protects us from what we're seeing from SCOTUS. That means trying to end Trump's tariffs, which have raised household costs annually for the average family about $2,500.
And there's a reimbursement now happening on tariffs.
And folks are working as hard as they can to get behind it, and I signed on to Representative Horsford's bill that would force the Trump administration to do that. But there's an ongoing fight every single day, and people want to hear about your plans to make life better and not dishonest attacks.
Speaking of which, recent Kinder survey shows #1 concern among Houstonians, cost of living and the economy. What's your plan to address that?
We have to do a number of things to make sure that we're putting more money back in people's pockets. There used to be a time in this country where you could work 40 hours a week, you could get the house, the 2 cars, send your kids off to do better than you did, and retire with dignity at a reasonable age. But right now, most people are working multiple jobs. They are not making ends meet. They're sending their kids off to college in some instances, and they're leaving with 6 figures of debt. And many people are retiring much later, if not retiring at all. I have, from the beginning, been adamant that the first step has to be ensuring that every single person has Medicare as a right, Medicare for all in this country, health care that is guaranteed to people to ensure that we're bringing down the rising costs of health insurance.
But you need numbers in Congress to affect those changes. You're one person. How do you get other people on board? How do you get the other party on board?
By being a leader and a collaborator, which is something I've done my entire career. When there was a waste plant that was going to be expanded into a black neighborhood here in Harris County, I collaborated with Commissioner Tom Ramsey, a Republican, and we were able to stop that from happening. At a time where you never see people working across the aisle, that's part of my record. When cigarette companies were pushing vaping products on our kids to get them hooked in dishonest ways, I teamed up with the Attorney General of Texas, who shall not be named. We were able to go after them and bring tens of millions of dollars back to Houston and Harris County for mitigation programs. My entire career, I've been somebody who's about finding solutions. If you're going to help me help the people of the 18th Congressional District, I don't care if you're black, white, orange, I'm willing to work with you to get it done. But it takes someone who's going to be a leader and a collaborator to make that happen.
Are you finding willing ears in Congress across the aisle in the short time you've been there?
I'm hopeful that at some point I will start, but I will tell you, it's a very polarizing time in this country. Across our Congress, you see that we have people who are more interested in going viral, people who are more interested in playing lapdog to the President of the United States than making sound decisions.
I don't mean to interrupt you. If that is true, then how do you get stuff done? If it's polarized and people are looking out for their own best interest, as you say.
Relationships take time. I've been in Congress 90 days, and I will tell you, after I gave my first speech, so when you win in a special election, you come in, you give a speech to the entire body of Congress. And you get 60 seconds, and I didn't go a second over. And afterwards, the reception I got from Democrats was fantastic, but also many Republicans approached me looking for opportunities to work together. So it's only been 90 days, and I believe that relationships are built over time, but I'm confident that I will be able to find folks on the other side of the aisle that I can find things to work on them with. Look, we disagree on 20% of things, and we hyper-focus on those things. We talk about them all the time. We put them on social media. But there's this whole other percentage of things that we agree on.
Like what?
Fighting back against flooding, right? Flooding mitigation measures, ensuring that we're removing as much red tape as we can at FEMA, for example, so that when there's a disaster, the money gets from FEMA to people's pocketbooks as quickly as possible. I'm sure that I could find a partner on the other side of the aisle, or maybe even my SET Act, the first bill that I introduced, the Special Elections Timeliness Act, which ensures that when there's a vacancy in a district,
which is what happened in your case.
Which is what happened in the 18th. The governor has a deadline by which they must call the election. Now, in our state, it was a Republican governor, but in other states, there have been allegations that it was a Democratic governor. So I'm hopeful that this is something I'll be able to work across the aisle with some of my Republican colleagues on to be able to get something done.
The Supreme Court stripped a provision of the Voting Rights Act barring racial gerrymandering in redistricting. Why do you oppose that?
Well, what they said is you can only have claims that show intentional discrimination, but they set the bar so high that nobody will be able to meet that bar. Take a look at what happened in Texas, where you had the governor, at the request of the President of the United States, look into redistricting for racial reasons. It was explicit. It was in the President's DOJ's letter to the governor. It was in the governor's statement to the legislator for racial reasons. And a 3-judge panel, after the map was redrawn, including a judge who was appointed by Donald Trump himself, said this was illegal racial gerrymandering. But when it got to the United States Supreme Court, they said, well, the legislator used the word partisan reasons, and so therefore we're going to take them at their word and let them draw a racist map. I'm against it because I believe that this is a country that has numerous states that for decades use racial discrimination in their practices against African Americans. And states should be able to draw maps that allow communities of color to elect a candidate of their choosing. And this isn't from the 50s and 60s, this happened just recently. In 2016, a court found that the North Carolina state legislator had taken a bunch of data, racial data for voters, and came up with a number of provisions that were designed to decrease the vote of African Americans. The court said, this is a quote, that they targeted African Americans with almost surgical precision. That wasn't in 1966, that was in 2016. It's still happening today, and the Voting Rights Act is in place to protect against that. What the Supreme Court just did was gut that provision.
So what do you think is the solution when it comes to redistricting?
The solution is going to have to be Congress will need to stand together to ban partisan gerrymandering in this country.
And how do you do that?
We got to convince the Republicans to get on board with it. What you saw was the last time that a bill that included a ban on partisan gerrymandering came before Congress, all of the Democrats supported it, all of them, and not a single Republican signed on. That means that you have one party that is in support of fairness in the drawing of maps, and you have another party that right now is not. Look, I think that part of the issue with the modern Republican Party is they have one person who has singular control over that party. Never before in American history have you seen a party where nobody was willing to step up and have comfortable disagreement with the leader of that party. But that's what you're saying out of Donald Trump right now. And the few people in the Republican Party who do speak up and say something, they get booted out of the party. Look at Liz Cheney, look at Marjorie Taylor Greene. They are run off out of Congress because this man has singular control over that party. That is not how it should be, and I hope that once Donald Trump is out of our mainstream political discourse, that you'll start to get a few Republicans who believe in acting reasonably and in the best interest of the American people again.
Have you met President Trump?
I have not.
Would you get an opportunity in Congress to do so?
I don't think so. I've been in for 90 days, and I'm sure I'm not at the top of his list. I have not met him, but his administration has called me a radical attorney. because of my time suing them when I was the county attorney and beating them to protect healthcare in our communities. But
if you could have an opportunity to sit down with President Trump, what would you say?
I would ask him to consider what's in the best interest of the American people. I would try to talk to him about as many topics as I can, try to get a better understanding about why he feels the way he feels about them, and see if there's any opportunity for good faith agreement. Now, I doubt there is. The president has shown us time and time again that he serves one master, and that is Donald Trump. And his goal is to enrich his family, to continue his political strength, and not to act in the best interest of his constituents. Look, this man was elected to office on the promise that he was not going to send us off to war. And then he gets in office and immediately tries to send our boys, our girls off to war to the tune of $1 billion a day, in direct defiance to what he had told his supporters before. So I would try to find some common ground, but I doubt that would exist.
States are now rushing back to redistricting, to reshape maps. So how do you fairly redistrict? If you don't want to do it by quote unquote race or partisanship, isn't it typically based on the census? We're in the middle of a census. I mean, in a census cycle, we're 4 years away from the next census. So how do we go back to the way it used to be, when you just go by the census and parse it that way?
So what's happening right now is Donald Trump knew that the policies that he was enacting were going to be unpopular. The so-called Big Beautiful Bill, which is one of the largest transfers of wealth in modern American history, cut SNAP benefits, cut Medicaid, line the pockets of the wealthy. He knew that was going to be unpopular. And that's why in the middle of a decade, he publicly told governors across the country to start redrawing the maps. And this is a quote, to find me 5 or 6 more seats. This is what he was telling states. It is explicit rigging of the game. Instead of trying to convince people in their hearts and minds, he just tried to redraw the lines to get more seats. In an ideal world, districts would be drawn based on all of the things that they've traditionally been based on. You get a nonpartisan redistricting commission. This should be data scientists, this should be folks who deal with maps, not politicians, who are drawing based on communities. Hey, these communities of interest, they have similar interests, we should keep them together, there's compactness, they should be in the same district. In a perfect world, and in a perfect world for me, we would look to draw as many seats as possible in each state that are as close to 50-50 as possible. That would require members of Congress to have conversations every single day with people who don't agree with them, right? And to be able to work across the aisle and to try to deal in the issues that most Americans care about, instead of trying to go find an issue that's going to make you go viral on social media.
So when you say 50-50, 50 Republican,
50% Republican, 50% Democrat. As many districts as possible in each state like that, and then the other districts drawn to the best of your ability. But instead what you're seeing is states are engaged in heavy partisan gerrymandering. And what that does is it creates a district that's 80% Republican. So the real fight in that district is in the primary election. And they're both going to say the most crazy things that they can say, right? You know, all black people are criminals, all undocumented immigrants should be removed immediately. You shouldn't be able to be Somalian and serve in the United States Congress, right? They say the craziest stuff they can to appease a small number of voters. And then once they get out of there, they have no interest in working across the aisle and working with reasonable people because they will get them in trouble with their primary base.
It seems partisanship rules. How do we get out of this cycle?
We're going to need a true two-party system that is controlled and governed by the people. And right now you have a party in the Democratic Party that is being controlled by voters. There are major changes happening in the party that are a result of the base. And you have a Republican Party which is controlled by Donald Trump, who has said himself, I am the MAGA movement, right? So because he is the only person who controls it, the politicians have no interest in standing up for their base. Their interest is in standing up to Donald Trump. Look at the Epstein files. This is a man who ran an entire campaign on alleged corruption and a failure to produce records that would show a wide-reaching child sex ring involving a billionaire who was very well known and who had given money to a lot of politicians. Yet the moment that he gets in office, he finds ways to undermine the investigation because his name is in a lot of those files. But because he declares himself the MAGA movement, he has no allegiance to the people who sent him to office. I think you got to get rid of Donald Trump. He has got to be removed from office in order for our politics to move forward. We know that hopefully we will be done with him at the end of this term, and we don't expect he's going to try to run for a third term. But I believe that he is a cancer on the American politic, and we have to do all we can to make sure that once we move past him, that we restore politics that is focused on the American people.
When you decided to run for Congress, you knew the partisanship was there, and you knew how difficult it would be to affect change given the nature of the game.
Yeah.
So why did you decide to run?
I got a lot done as the Harris County attorney.
But that's Harris County.
Sure.
Now you're going to now you're in Washington.
Yeah, but look, if you think Washington is partisan, I'd like to introduce you to some folks in the state government in the state of Texas. We have extreme partisanship here in the state of Texas, with state legislators who, on the Republican side, refuse to agree on anything. And despite that, I was able to work with Ken Paxton, who was one of the far-right MAGA Republicans that you ever see. I was able to work with him on several things, including going after Volkswagen for a deceptive emissions scheme and going after Juul and other cigarette companies. So I've shown an ability to work with folks to convince them and to get stuff done. I believe that we are in the fight of a lifetime right now. The decisions that are being made in Washington, D.C. will shape the next 50, 60, 70 years in this country. And we need folks out in Washington, D.C. who are going to stand for the people, who are going to fight when it's time to fight, who are going to work together when it's time to work together. I've shown myself to be that person as the county attorney, and I'm interested in doing the same thing, continuing to do the same thing in Congress. Look, I've been around politics enough to know that there are people who get in this business for all kinds of reasons. I ran for office to help people. That was my #1 goal. Both of my parents are military. They joined the military because it got them a warm bed and a hot meal, and I saw what it was able to do, what public service was able to do to transform my family. We went from sending more people to prison and to college to me being a first-generation college graduate to now me serving in the United States Congress. I want to give back to my country. I want to give back to these communities. In the same way that I put them first as the county attorney, I'm going to put them first as a member of Congress. And look, we're in some dark days. We're dealing with some dark personalities. These are incredibly troubling times, but I believe that if people come into this with a pure heart, a good spirit, and ready to work hard, we can get stuff done. So I refuse to lose belief in the American project. I just refuse to. And regardless of how tainted Donald Trump has made things, regardless of how evil his rhetoric is, I still have faith that every single person out there can have a fair shot at the American dream, and I believe that I can help make that happen.